Ladies and gentlemen, there are questions that thunder louder in the silence than they ever could in speech. And this, God, are you even there, is not whispered in lecture halls or scribbled in books. No, it is often cried from hospital beds, lonely apartments, battlefields of the soul, not asked by philosophers, but by the broken, the betrayed, the bewildered. You see, this is not merely a theological inquiry, it's a human cry. And that is why you must stay with me through this speech. Not because I hold the answer in a neat little box, but because this question may hold more meaning than any answer ever could. We will not only examine the question, we will follow it into the shadows, the silence, and, I hope, the dawn. The question, God, are you even there, is not the scoffing of a cynic, but the groaning of a soul in trouble. It is perhaps the most honest thing a person can ask. For when the lights go out, whether by grief, loss, injustice, or simply exhaustion, what else is left to say? To ask this question is not to blaspheme. It is to admit our frailty, our longing. The very act of asking presumes that someone might be listening. We are told God is loving, that he is near to the brokenhearted. Yet there are times when we cry out, and the heavens do not answer, or seem not to. Does silence mean absence? If a parent watches a child walk alone for the first time, are they not still present, though hidden, to let the child grow strong? Could it be that God's silence is not neglect, but a form of presence too deep for sound? Some think faith is certainty. But what if it is trust in the dark? Imagine standing in a fog. You cannot see the road, but you remember that once, in the light, you saw the path. Faith is walking, step by trembling step, in the memory of that light. Faith is not the absence of doubt. It is often born through doubt. If love is to be real, it must be chosen. And choice requires freedom, which means we must not be overwhelmed, manipulated, or coerced. God's hiddenness may be the greatest act of respect he offers us, the space to seek, to wrestle, to discover, and perhaps to love him not because we must, but because we want to. History, scripture, even experience tell us the silence often comes before the miracle, before the whisper in the storm, before the stone rolls away. If you are in the silence now, let me assure you, it is not the end. The very hunger you feel to find him may be the evidence that he is already near. The question, God, are you even there, is not something only theologians or philosophers wrestle with. It is a cry that lives in the gut, not the mind. It rises when reason fails, when logic runs dry, and when life becomes too heavy for the heart to carry alone. This question isn't born in textbooks or seminar rooms. It's born in hospital corridors, in the silent room after a loved one dies, in the long nights of depression, in the loneliness that no voice can touch. It is asked not in arrogance, but in agony. It comes from the one who has waited, hoped, and finally whispered into the void. If you are there, say something. The cry is human, deeply, universally human. It's the same whether whispered by a grieving parent or shouted by a soldier in the trenches. It's the trembling voice of someone who once believed and now isn't sure if they were ever heard at all. This isn't a cry of rebellion. It's a cry of relationship, of expectation. We do not question the presence of what we do not long for. To ask if God is there is to admit we want him to be. It is to confess a need for someone beyond ourselves. Someone good, someone real, someone who sees. And this is why the question matters so much. It is not a sign of failure. It is not weakness. It is the echo of eternity in the human heart. It is the soul reaching out into mystery, hoping, against all evidence, that someone might reach back. Doubt is often treated like an enemy of faith, as if asking questions disqualifies someone from belief. But this could not be further from the truth. Doubt is not the opposite of faith, certainty is. Faith, by its very nature, involves risk, a step into the unknown, a trust without full clarity. Doubt, then, is not betrayal. It is a companion on the road. It is the shadow that proves there is still light to seek. The presence of doubt often shows that we are taking our beliefs seriously enough to test them, to wrestle with them, to not settle for shallow answers. When someone says, "God, are you even there?" they are not necessarily giving up on God. They may be searching more honestly than ever before. Real faith is not built in classrooms, but in the wilderness. It grows not from the absence of questions, but from surviving them. The psalmist doubted. The prophets doubted. Even Christ, in his most human moment on the cross, cried out, "Why have you forsaken me?" Doubt, then, is not a shameful secret. It is a sacred struggle. So let us not fear our doubts. Let us not silence the questions that rise in suffering or silence. Instead, let us carry them faithfully, knowing they may be the very tool by which God shapes a truer, humbler, more enduring faith in us. The hiddenness of God is one of the most troubling and mysterious aspects of belief. If God is real, and if he is loving, then why does he not make himself undeniably visible? Why not write his name in the stars or speak audibly from the heavens each morning? These are the questions that arise when we feel abandoned, unheard, or simply confused by the silence. But perhaps the silence is not what we think it is. Perhaps God is not absent, but deliberately hidden, not to torment us, but to protect something sacred. Consider the nature of love. It cannot be forced. Love must be chosen freely, or it ceases to be love at all. If God were to overwhelm us with his presence, we might obey, fear, or admire him. But could we truly love him? There is something profound in the idea that God, though all-powerful, chooses restraint. He hides not because he is indifferent, but because he values the authenticity of our response. Like a teacher who steps back during an exam, or a parent who watches their child learn to walk, God's hiddenness may be an act of patient grace. He gives us space to question, to grow, to choose. His silence might be a canvas on which our faith is painted. And sometimes the more we look into the stillness, the more we discover traces of his presence in beauty, in conscience, in longing, in love. So perhaps the hiddenness of God is not a problem to solve, but an invitation to trust, to seek even when we do not see, to believe not because we are forced, but because we are free. What if God's presence is not always felt, but always faithful? So often we equate God's reality with our emotional experiences. If we feel peace, joy, or clarity, we say, God is here. But when we feel lost, numb, or abandoned, we ask, where did he go? Yet feelings are unreliable indicators of reality. Just as the sun remains in the sky even when hidden by thick clouds, so too may God remain near, even when we cannot perceive him. The absence of feeling is not the absence of presence. There are countless moments in life when we do not feel love from those around us. Yet we know their love endures in action, in memory, in commitment. Why should God be any different? Our desire to constantly feel God may come from a misunderstanding of what his presence actually means. It is not always a rush of emotion or a miraculous sign. Sometimes it is quiet strength in the middle of suffering. Sometimes it is the persistence to pray when prayer feels empty. Sometimes it is the longing for God that proves he is already near, tugging at the heart. We do not ask for the sun to shine louder to prove it is there. We trust its warmth, even on overcast days. Likewise, God's faithfulness often operates in the background, sustaining us without spectacle. So when we cannot feel God, let us remember, His presence is not based on our perception. It is based on his promise. He may be closer in the silence than in the storm, nearer in the ache than in the answer. And perhaps when we look back, we will see that in the very moments we thought he had vanished, he was carrying us through. Hope is not the denial of pain. It is the quiet defiance that pain does not get the final word. When we ask, God, are you even there? We are not simply voicing despair. We are reaching for something beyond it. We are reaching for hope, however faint it may be. This kind of hope is not shallow optimism or blind cheerfulness. It is the kind that exists in the dark, when everything seems silent. It is a hope that stands in the tension, that refuses to let the silence of God be the end of the conversation. There is a strange beauty in the soul that still asks the question, even when no answer comes. That soul has not given up. That soul still knocks, still listens, still hopes. Throughout history, many have encountered the silence of God, saints, prophets, ordinary people. Yet for many of them, it was in the silence that something deep began to grow. Not a certainty of answers, but a confidence in presence. They learned that hope is not based on having every question resolved. It is based on trusting that even unanswered prayers are heard. Even when God seems silent, he is not indifferent. And even when we feel most alone, we're often being drawn into a deeper understanding of love, one that is not dependent on immediate comfort. So let us not be afraid of silence. Let us not confuse it with absence. Hope tells us that the silence is a season, not a sentence. It is a chapter, not the conclusion. And often, after the silence comes the whisper, the breakthrough, the light that dawns, not because we forced it, but because we waited. And waiting, though painful, is often the truest form of hope.